Karen James of the New York Times advises that we don't expect their bickering to be on the level of Neil Simon, and we won't be disappointed. Critic James Bernardolini says, while it won't come close to my top 10 best list for 1993, it will be right up there among the pictures that I had the most fun watching. And about its sequel, Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times does our job by saying that this is, of course, a big screen sitcom, and in fact, I would love to see this material transplanted to the TV screen where it belongs. On this episode of Ruined Childhoods, we decide the fate of grumpy old men.
Sequel. Reboot. Which one will it be? It's the Ruined Childhoods podcast.
Greetings, moron. I mean, starfighters.
Hey, putz.
Dickhead.
Starfighters, I am feeling a lot of post-Thanksgiving gratitude for all of you. We've gotten some sales on our merch page, and it hasn't been us. And we just want to say thank you. Please send in, when you get your merch, take a picture, if it's a shirt wearing it, if it's a mug holding it, whatever. And
if it's
we'd love
gift,
to share it online.
Take a shot when you give that gift, and just the joy that person feels when they see that, silhouette of Jesse Plemons. And he does always deliver.
Yeah, somebody did purchase a Jesse Plemons Always Delivers t-shirt, so I'm excited about that one.
I was hoping it would perhaps be Jesse Plemons, but
we don't know that. We don't know that.
And also a lot of credit, because this is all John, designing these shirts, and he just, I'll be in the middle of teaching one of my little, I'd say Zoom class, but we do Microsoft Teams.
Zoom is the generic Kleenex term for it.
That's exactly what I was just about to say.
Yeah.
So I'm doing my virtual school, and I'll get a message from John. It'll pop up, and it'll be a couple of options of text with an Oscar Isaac silhouette, or perhaps the different textures on the Problem Child style logo.
So we do have an Oscar Isaac style piece of merch that is currently under review because
coming soon.
Well, hopefully coming soon. It has to be under review from Legendary Entertainment because he's in the new Dune, which is one of their pictures, and if they approve it, then it will be official merchandise. We have the right to say that. It's not like they're going to sell it or anything. But
same story for the Yes You Chalamet shirt. Which is not in the works and which just happened.
No, it isn't.
I don't think that's going to happen. That's one that I would send that to John, and John would just say, no,
maybe something more subtle. Something more subtle. Our Ruined Childhoods Problem Child shirt is the least subtle thing in the world. Anyway, thank you so much to everybody who's been checking it out. It's at tpublic.com. Right now, it's just not yet searchable, but it's tpublic.com/user/ruined-childhoods. The link will also be in the description for this episode of the podcast.
But hey, also, if you buy something, please share the link across your networks, and then I guess it'll be easier to find.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, why not?
We're working out the whole search thing right now.
Yeah.
So Dan, I've got some news bits for reboot, remake, sequel, prequel news. Allegedly, and this is according to /film. Well, I mean, they have a direct source. Pauly Shore is their direct source. He is.
The Weasel.
The Weasel is desperately trying to get Disney Plus to make an Encino Man sequel. So allegedly, he's already been talking with Sean Astin and Brendan Fraser, and they say that they are on board. So says Pauly Shore. And I'd love that. I think it'd be great. Encino Man's awesome.
Agree. I
give
give that.
Juice.
Why not? Let's go back. Let's wheeze the juice one more time.
Let's wheeze the juice. Yeah.
Revisit the Encino Man
Yeah, sometimes my daughter, Maggie, she'll separate the syllables of a one-syllable word. Like she'll kind of break it into 2 syllables with a little beat in the middle and be like, all right, the weasel.
She does that with the word yes.
Yes.
Yes. She gives it like a little Dixie Carter on oh God, I almost said Desperate Housewives, Designing Women. Right before she would go into a rant. Like, well, yes, well, Alexander. Yeah, she does, yes, but Maggie
let me
also
tell
goes,
you something that is
also true.
Yeah. Well. So in other news, we've got Toxic Avenger news. I didn't know that they were going to be rebooting the Toxic Avenger, but they're doing it with Peter Dinklage. So this is also, I think this is on Deadline and /Film. It says the Toxic Avenger reboot will be steeped in environmental themes and subverts the superhero genre in the vein of Deadpool. When a struggling everyman is pushed into a vat of toxic waste, he is transformed into a mutant freak who must go from shunned outcast to underdog hero as he races to save his son, his friends, and his community from the forces of corruption and greed. Sign me up. I said I was a Trauma fan, for a long time. I don't know what their involvement would be, but Toxic Avenger was their most mainstream property. They had the Toxic Crusader animated TV show for a while.
It's a musical. It's a musical.
That's right. It is a musical. Do they really?
I think. I don't know. I couldn't tell you if any. I'll be honest with you. I have never seen it. I've never seen the Toxic Avenger. I've never seen any of the. I don't know if I've ever seen a Trauma picture.
Really? I was accepted for an internship with them, but right before it was to begin, they were like restructuring they were like in total limbo, and they were just like, yeah, so I don't think that's going to work out. So it would have been really interesting, but I remember going into the Trauma office to meet with them in like Hell's Kitchen or something, and there was a lot of like the props on the wall, like on these shelves.
Did you meet with Lloyd Kaufman?
I did not meet with, I met him. He was there, but we did not chat. Lloyd Kaufman. Yeah. Actually, some friends of mine, released a movie with Trauma. I think they might have released a couple movies with Trauma. Eric Goslin, my former podcast co-host, and Jim Martin, they had some movies that were Trauma releases. Yeti, a love story. Yeah. So,
and I believe the sequel, correct?
Yes. Yeti, a life story. Yeti, a love story 2, Life on the Streets, I think is what it's called. And I think they also had one called Street Team Massacre that I believe was released by or distributed by Trauma. Anyway, I could be wrong.
If you're listening and if you're a fan of Trauma.
My friends don't listen to this show.
No, not your friends. I mean, no, I'm saying if you, to our listeners, please check them out.
Yeah, for sure. Real weird stuff.
If you are Trauma curious, as I am, I'm like, you know what? My interest has been piqued.
Yeah. Yeah. It's real fringy stuff. It's funny and wrong in a lot of ways. And
I started watching Tromeo and Juliet once when I was teaching.
Tromeo and Juliet's messed up.
2 households, different as dried plums and pears, in fair Manhattan, where we lay our scene. 2 homes adrift in hate for 20 years, a score, awash in sin for long deprived of dreams. Once long ago they planted seeds of hate, which bloomed to constant battles for revenge. Soon murder was the awful commonplace.
Back when I was teaching in New York and I was looking at different film adaptations of Romeo and Juliet to say like, all right, how could I, because what I wanted to do was show for each act of the play, I wanted to show a different film version of it. So I was like, let me see. I'm teaching in a New York City high school. Let me look at this one 5 minutes in. Nope. That's not going to work.
Tromeo and Juliet was, I believe, written by James Gunn. It also features Sean Gunn, James Gunn's brother, who is in, I think, all of James Gunn's movies.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you're looking for some early James Gunn stuff, Tromeo and Juliet's your movie. So, Dan, did you have anything you wanted to add news-wise, or maybe one more thing from our last episode?
No, I have nothing to add today.
Nothing, no more Steven Seagal bits of wisdom?
Yeah, no, he has been off my radar, to use an Under Siege related
a nautical term.
To use a nautical term. Yeah, no, nothing except that I'm curious to hear if anyone, since listening to that episode, has gone and checked out Under Siege 2 Dark Territory for the first time after hearing John's praise.
It's great.
Of it. I have not
Despite
really
Steven
had the
Seagal's best
opportunity.
efforts to make it terrible, it is actually really good.
It's on my list for whenever I have time for that. So I was just curious to know if anybody else, if you have, shoot us an email at ruinedchildhoodspod@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Let us know what you thought of Under Siege 2 Dark Territory or anything else.
Or anything else.
I mean, you could send us the email. We might not, if you're telling us about like a great recipe you prepared, it depends. We might pay attention to that. If you're talking about one of these movies that we're talking about, though, hell yeah.
Might pique our interest a little bit more.
I think so. Keep it relevant is what we're saying,
2 episodes ago was episode 91, and we talked about 1991's The Fisher King. Last episode was episode 92. We talked about 1992's Under Siege. And this is episode 93. We're talking about 1993's Grumpy Old Men. Dan.
So I'm thinking we should talk a little bit about like the cinematic year of 1993.
Sure.
Because like
Dan, you have the floor.
Thank you. 1991 was like the bonanza year in movies. Just like even the blockbusters were critically, like Terminator 2 was, and that's just one of the best films of the 90s. A lot of the best films of the 90s came out in 1991 from poppier stuff, and even things like a Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, or The Rocketeer, which we've talked about. Check it out in the archives. Didn't make a huge splash, but has really.
What year was Splash?
1984, which was another contender for great years in movies. But I'm not going off on a 1984 tangent right now because. Don't get me started. When you start listing the movies that came out in 1984, it's breathtaking.
Okay, 91.
1991, same thing. 1992, not so much. You've got some great voices coming out that year. Some really notable films, some that we've talked about, some that we haven't, and others that are Under Siege. And 1993, I feel like, is Steven Spielberg, because he's got Jurassic Park coming out in June and then Schindler's List coming out in December.
Man, what
it's
a year.
Like in 1 year. And I don't think like Jurassic Park is his best movie. And to me, I don't think it's even top 5 Steven Spielberg movies.
No, but it is a significant Spielberg film.
It is culturally significant. And in terms of his career and what, like with his resources and his reputation, it was really when we saw like, all right, this director is such a bona fide hit master. Although really not so, I mean, yes, like Hook, I think was his last one before that.
Well, that was 91. 91.
Yeah. There you go. And then before that, I think was Always in 89, which I don't think that was such a success.
Much earlier than that is when you have, Jaws and Close Encounters.
So, I mean, in all the Indiana Jones, that's like just throughout the 80s.
82.
So we come to 1993 and you've got a director with such skill. I'm not denying Steven Spielberg, amazingly skilled director, and enough clout to be able to create the most realistic movie dinosaurs ever made. Although, as my high school students have recently told me, we don't know how realistic these images of dinosaurs are.
Teens.
I don't know what it is. It came up because I always ask like a creative question in the beginning of class. Short tangent here. I always ask a creative question.
A tangent within a tangent.
And it was, we're tangenting all over the place. So I asked them, if you could spend 24 hours in another time and place on the planet Earth, because I had to specify that because you have always one kid who's like, I want to be when the universe started. I want to be there. I was like,
Just
no.
floating around.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, as somebody told me, we're all just floating around anyway. So,
Teens.
high school, I love them. So they were talking about how they were like, well, you know, there's evidence that a Stegosaurus's skeleton might not have protruded from its body. And they're talking about like, I would go back to the dinosaurs because I want to see how they really looked. I was like, there's a conspiracy theory about what dinosaurs look like. I was like, I thought like after a few hundred years of looking into that, like I figured they had it down.
For me, it's like when I find out something like, oh, well, this actually had feathers. It's not like, oh, well, they got to recut Jurassic Park now. It's kind of just like, huh, okay.
Spielberg does the recut like with E.T. when he replaced the guns with
walkie-talkies.
With walkie-talkies. And which I think he kind of backtracked on that. I think he backpedaled that.
I hope so.
So you have 1993, and when you think of significant movies that came out in 1993, it's like, well, the big popcorn movie that year is Jurassic Park, and like the big award winner is Schindler's List.
Yeah.
So how was Steven Spielberg not going to win an Oscar for Best Director? Not that would have made a difference, but I imagine anybody else who was nominated that year actually had a pretty like calm and easy night because they were just like, I am not winning this tonight, so I am just gonna chill and have a good time. So, and I mean, you think about the other notable movies in 1993. Last Action Hero comes to mind, but Last Action Hero has notable in that it was very hyped.
Right, it was hyped.
1993 was the year of a lot of hyped movies that didn't live up to expectations, like, as many would argue, Last Action Hero, as pretty much everybody would argue. I remember Sliver, when that came out.
Oh.
It was all like, oh yeah, Sharon Stone and Tom Berenger and William Baldwin, and it's the sexy new thriller directed by, I think it was Philip Noyce who directed it, who had Patriot Games the year before. And then it came out and it was like, oh, this movie's really boring. And there's a scene where you see Sharon Stone masturbating in a bathtub.
Okay.
And it's like, oh, okay. It was, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen it since then, and I was like a teenager, so maybe I just didn't get it. But
were you just like, Noyce? And then you're just like, that's the name of the director. Sorry, you were talking about 1993.
And did you want to stop me? It's notable for controversy, like Made in America, which kind of had that controversy because of Ted Danson doing that blackface bit when he like at some awards show, and it was like before that it came out.
Yeah,
I'm hazy on the details.
I'm a big fan of Made in America. Just throwing that out there.
I haven't seen it in a long time. I remember Will Smith being really impressive in it.
What's up, baby? You want to slide out for a minute? Well, no, I really shouldn't. Oh, come on, baby. Let's just go see a movie or something. Well, I'm just not really ready for commitment. I just want to take you out. I said no. Bitch. Your mother.
Will Smith is really good as just like a supporting role. Was that Nia Long in that?
Yes, Nia Long, and I remember she was great in it.
Playing Whoopi Goldberg's daughter. Yeah,
I'll check it out again. I'll check that one out again. But hey, it's on the list, so
I put it there.
I'm trying to think of other notable movies that came out in 1993. Like the big indie film, I feel like was like The Piano. Yeah, I could just look all this stuff up, but I'm just freestyling here.
Searching for Bobby Fischer.
Oh, Searching
Malice
for
at Bronx Tale, Tombstone, Dazed and Confused was that year, talking about the indies.
So you do have some, so like Tombstone.
Got The Firm.
The Firm was a big movie that summer. Yes.
In the Name of the Father.
I remember that was a big one.
Fugitive.
Right. Daniel Day-Lewis, The Fugitive, right?
Fugitive was one of the big
there's
movies,
a lot
from what I remember.
Yeah. Well, as we discussed briefly, I guess on the last episode, The Fugitive, pretty notable.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, just when you talk about movies that come up time and time again, all these years later, The Fugitive is up there, probably more than Schindler's List.
I feel like Schindler's List has become kind of like a textbook.
Schindler's List is referenced. Fugitive is referenced and quoted.
Well, and watched, because if you're gonna put a movie on tonight, what are you more likely gonna watch, The Fugitive or Schindler's List?
Watch The Fugitive twice.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a movie that you go back to a lot. Like, I've seen it a number of times. Like, my wife had not seen it. I don't think she had ever seen it. And
Laura hadn't seen it either.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And to me, it was the perfect excuse to purchase it on Blu-ray. And because it's an incredible movie. I'm not going to be cool about it. Like, I'm not going to be like, well, it's just the red coat. No, Schindler's List is a fucking powerhouse of a movie.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember seeing it. I mean, I saw it with Mom on New Year's Day.
Okay.
January 1st, 1992. She was crying by the time the Universal logo faded out. But it was just...
Wait, that came out end of 92?
No. January 1st, January 1st, like 94.
Okay, got it.
Sorry. It came out at the end of 93. Sorry. But I remember we saw it on New Year's Day, and
it came out February 4th, 94.
No, it came out in limited release before that. Because
it says 1993, but it says release date February 4th, 94
that
USA.
Might have been the wide release, but maybe. I remember we saw it New Year's Day. Like I do have the ticket stub.
Dan, I am not questioning your memory of when you saw it, when and where and how you saw Schindler's List.
Anyway, 93 to me, that's what it's about. But, and you know what? Hey, you know what movie I saw? We saw a week before that, Grumpy Old Men, because that was our Christmas movie.
Yeah. So for our listeners, Dan and I, grew up in a Jewish household where we followed the tradition of going to see a movie on Christmas. We did Christmas Day, Chinese food the night before. And, the Christmas movie was always a big tradition. And I remember some of them much better than others. Seeing Grumpy Old Men seems familiar. Like, that seems right to me. I mean, I would have been 10, so my memory wouldn't have been like amazing, but it does feel like such a familiar thing that we saw this.
Oh, definitely. Like, it was, I think it was kind of like, there were some years where it was kind of hard to figure out, and we would just be like, all right, this is playing at a convenient time.
This may come up on another episode, but I remember one year, and I don't remember if you were there, but we saw Shakespeare in Love, and I felt very uncomfortable watching it with Mom and Dad, like sandwiched between our parents. And
Dad was asleep.
Right. Well, talking about that guy, when we saw Royal Tenenbaums for a Christmas movie, do you remember what he said? I don't remember the words he said about it, but he hated it. He was like, thought it was like the worst movie he'd ever seen.
And context here. So we grew up in a suburb of New York City, and our father was not a big fan of driving into New York City. And which is what
did we have to go to New York for that?
We had to go to New York for Royal Tenenbaums because that's the only place it was playing on Christmas Day. It was playing we saw it at the Regal Union Square.
My guess is that we had a hand in being annoying about wanting to see that.
Oh, I think we pretty much declared that was what we were seeing.
Rightfully so. It's so good.
I don't remember there being a debate about it. It was like,
there was no debate. He hated it. About going to see it. About going to see it.
Yeah.
Got it.
Oh, no, he definitely hated it. But that's like, of course he hated it. Yeah.
So Grumpy Old Men. When I was 10 and we saw this in the theater, I certainly was unaware of all of the very overt innuendo, especially from Burgess Meredith, who, man, was so good in both of these movies. Man, Burgess Meredith, so funny.
His performance sorry, you know what? Never mind. I'll wait.
I was going to say that watching, like, during the end credits, they have like the outtakes, and there's essentially just like, you know, a collection of his different improvised takes saying like all of these wildly inappropriate things. And that's as enjoyable as watching the movie.
Looks like he's gonna enter the Holy of Holies, coitus uninterruptus. Yeah, it looks like Chuck Slippener, the old... Looks like Chuck's gonna put the hot dog in the bun. It looks like Chuck's a tomcat on the prowl. Meow. Looks like Chuck's taking the old log to the beaver. Yeah, it looks like Chuck's taking the skin boat to Tuna Town. Looks like Chuck's taking a ride in the wild baloney pony.
It's just so good.
And he was suffering from dementia
or Alzheimer's, maybe.
Yeah, especially like on the second one.
Mm-hmm.
And like, they would really have to like help him out through these scenes a lot. But the journey of that character, and I know you're gonna do the synopses of the plots, but I mean, look, who wasn't expecting that this character, the character of Jack Lemmon's, 90s by the second one, 96-year-old father,
something like that, yeah.
It wasn't a big surprise that he dies, but by the time that
in the movie,
in the second film, Burgess Meredith passed away in 1997.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time he dies, though, it's sentimental.
Yeah.
But it's not sad because this guy has just lived so much. I mean,
well, also
he gets laid the night before.
We'll talk about that in a few minutes. So, why don't I just launch into Grumpy Old Men, the first, just straight up grumpy, not grumpier, Grumpy Old Men. John Gustafson and Max Goldman have been best friends since they were 5, but blood was drawn when John ended up marrying Max's big crush, even though they divorced years later due to her infidelity. As the years went by, the venom between these frenemies / next-door neighbors only grew more poisonous. Things get even worse between them when a new hottie, Ariel, moves in across the street. They both lobby to be her new beau, but she only has eyes for John. Not wanting a repeat of what happened decades prior, John ends their budding relationship so that Max can step in, which he does. After John has a heart attack, Max realizes that he's getting in the way of a true romance between Ariel and John. Meanwhile, John's daughter, Melanie, is going through a divorce from a grade-A sleaze, leaving an opening for Max's son Jacob to step in, which he's been wanting to do since they were children. Both Max and John are super supportive of this union, which only kind of begins at the very end of the film. Also, John's father is a super horny old man. That's my synopsis. So John Gustafson is played by Jack Lemmon. Max Goldman is played by Walter Matthau. The odd couple reprising their vibe for, another movie. And ann-margaret as Ariel. We talked about Burgess Meredith as John Sr. Daryl Hannah plays Melanie. Kevin Pollak is Jacob. I didn't mention a couple of characters. I didn't mention Chuck, Ozzie Davis, who plays Chuck as the bait shop owner, who is the first to court Ariel and passes away in the film, which is a very sad moment. And then we have Buck Henry playing the IRS guy who's hounding John because he didn't declare his wife's part-time job, and as part of like his pension or something like that, and he owed like $13,000 plus interest, which ends up being covered as a loan by Max so that he can keep his house. But that's a whole thing. Christopher McDonald is Melanie's soon-to-be ex-husband. Shooter McGavin himself.
If you're casting a grade A sleaze in the 90s, Christopher McDonald is your go-to guy. Thelma and Louise.
He's so good. He's so good.
Geez.
Yeah, so
he's actually kind of toned down in this.
Well, he only has like one scene, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's Shooter. He's total sleaze. But yeah, it's The Odd Couple. Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon are just kind of doing their thing, their shtick that they had been doing for decades and continue to do even after this. Odd Couple 2 was, I think,
Odd Couple 2, Out to Sea.
Out to Sea, that's right.
Which were both failures, which is why Grumpiest Old Men did not happen.
Yeah.
Also because of the death of one of the actors who was going to be in it. Marcello Mastroianni.
Oh, yeah, I can read that.
From,
the Grumpier Old Men lineage. Yeah. Dan, what did you think about this movie?
Okay, I kind of need to talk about it in the context of Grumpier Old Men.
So do you want, why don't you go into a synopsis of Grumpier?
Yeah.
Okay. And these two movies are just like, you could just watch them back to back and like they just should exist as a two-part, like you just have to watch them both.
As a Warner Brothers double pack that you can get for $7.99 at your local grocery store. Yes,
definitely. In one of those bins that you're just like, oh, what's in here? Maybe there's something good. And it's just this. All right. So Grumpier Old Men. John and Ariel are happily married, and John and Max's friendship couldn't be better. But that comes to a halt once Maria Righetti moves into town with her mother to open a lakeside Italian restaurant at the site of their old bait shop, which will certainly disrupt their favorite fishing spot just at the edge of the lake. They band together to try and sabotage the restaurant, which royally pisses off Ariel, who forces John to apologize to Maria. After he passes out drunk at the restaurant and is forced to spend the night, Ariel is convinced that he slept with Maria. And Ariel's not the only suspicious one. Max also thinks that this is true, which stinks since he has the hots for Maria. And thus, the feud is reignited. Meanwhile, Jacob and Melanie are looking to get hitched, but the wedding and possibly the relationship gets called off after Jacob makes a mean comment about her divorce. This being about being a bad judge of character. Both John and Jacob have to apologize to their partners, which is not an easy task. All the while, Max and Maria have begun a wonderful relationship, but Maria calls it off because her mother reminds her of the 5 divorces that she had, and another relationship will only end in heartache. Speaking of Maria's mother, she has begun shacking up with John's horny father, which is quite nice since he ends up actually passing away shortly after. Everyone apologizes and makes up, and the movie ends the same way as the first, with a wedding. But this time it's between Max and Maria, not Melanie and Jacob, which we are led to believe. So Sophia Loren plays Maria Sophia Coletta Righetti Goldman, as it turns out. And then we have Anne Morgan Gilbert as Francesca Righetti, but that's just about the only changes that we have. I think that Sophia Loren was a great addition to the world.
Yes. Okay. So now I can talk about Grumpy Old Men because I didn't see Grumpier Old Men in the theater, and I felt like I had seen bits and pieces of it since, but I couldn't remember if I had seen the entire thing. And actually, I don't think I had. I think I always like missed parts in the middle because I remembered the ending when I rewatched it. But I have to say, I enjoyed it more. Like
it's fun.
It was more fun. Grumpy Old Men was
okay. May I?
Yeah, you may.
Okay, because you seem to be having a hard time.
Shall you may?
Oh boy. it's not going to catch on. Stop trying to make fetch happen. So I think that Grumpy Old Men, as fun as it is and as enjoyable as it is to watch the hijinks between the two of them, and you do have the like really nice moments between the two of them that are kind of not while they're together, but like, you know, how Max actually wants to help out John, and you know, and when they are together, when John has his heart attack and Max like knocks on the neighbor's door to try to get someone to call an ambulance, and you know, like there are those moments. But the problem that I had with it was Ann-Margaret's character, Ariel. She is this independent woman. She is an artist. She's a professor. You know, she's on her own. She's a very free spirit. We're introduced to her because she's like, you know, on like a snowmobile peeling down the street at like 2 a.m. And, you know, she busts into people's houses and cooks them dinner. And, you know, she's just like this truly free spirit. And what bothers me is that she's treated like property by everybody. You know, it's just, she is just a conquest for everybody's sexual desires. You know, it's just a matter of like, who can get to her first? And it's like, I saw her first, she's mine. And it's like, there's never a moment where she's just like, first of all, I don't belong to any of y'all. I got the hots for this dude over here. And I like him. But it's like when John breaks up with her, she's immediately with Max. And it's like, she doesn't like him like that. Like, she's friends with him, but she's not interested in him. I don't know.
Yeah, she just like hangs out with him, but she knows he's interested in her.
Oh, she totally leads him on. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Well, they're on the snowmobile the next day.
Yeah.
Yeah, that bothered me. I mean, there's a certain amount of relationship building and like establishing things that needs to happen so that grumpier old men can just be more fun.
Yeah.
But I think that, yeah, like that was a plot element that bothered me as well.
Right. And it could be just, you know, 1993, you're making a Jack Lemmon, Walter Matthau movie. Yes. Their dynamic takes precedent over everything else. And
exactly,
that might have been the mentality.
Well, exactly. And really the fact that if you just kind of take what you find out about her character and go ahead and make assumptions, it's kind of like, why is she going for either one of these guys? If she's such an independent person, why, like, is she, like, she should not be desperate. Like, she's not desperate. I don't want her to be, but it's kind of like immediately
she does make a comment about how life is more fun when you're doing it with someone else. I don't remember the exact line that she says.
Yes.
And that's the only reason why you would think that she would end up with anybody in that small Minnesota town.
It justifies more of why she's just like, hey, cool. Yeah. Come on over for dinner. Let's have dinner. Oh, flowers for me. Like, she takes everything at face value in a positive way. That sounds like it's like a, I don't know, backhanded compliment, but she almost doesn't look into anything, even though she's smart enough to know that when Max has flowers, she's like, oh, are those for me? They're beautiful. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind
There's
of
never
like,
a moment where she says like, hey, we just need to talk for a minute. Like, these are lovely and I really appreciate it. But, you know, I'm seeing John and he's my dude. I like him. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it doesn't make sense. She also, according to the script, hasn't really been with anyone, or I don't know if she even says she's like dated anyone since her husband passed away 5 years earlier.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I like that, but I would like to see that character be given more of that independent identity and not just make it, well, she's the woman who falls for one or the other or both.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like there needs to have been a scene before she gets to town where like she hears that there's a lot of like horny old single men in Wabasha, Minnesota, or whatever the town's name is.
Yeah, or something like where she's really just like, where can I move? Where she's like, I don't want to get serious with anyone. I just want to kind of get laid well, and I don't really care who's doing it. And these desperate guys are going to they will take 8 Viagras so that they can go all night. So you know what? I will just close my eyes or turn around or do what I need to do, and go ahead, Walter Matthau.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, that's my problem with it. Otherwise, it's a really fun movie. It's, if you just get past that, then it's,
it's sweet. The Kevin Pollak, Daryl Hannah storyline is sweet.
Yeah, I like them together. They're a very unlikely couple. And I do like how, their parents, John and Max, really wanted to happen and seem to have always wanted it to happen. And, despite their ongoing decades-long feud, still want their kids to get together with one another. And, that's nice.
Well, they have a feud, but I guess like describing them as frenemies is especially accurate.
Yeah.
Because they have a feud.
They look out for each other.
Oh, they totally look out for each other. Like, they're friends.
Yeah.
Was it John's got a picture of the two? Is it John who's got the picture of the two of them?
I think so. Yeah. When they're like kids and fishing and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So we didn't talk about, ice fishing is a big aspect of this. And I got to tell you, I don't know of any other movies that show like the ice fishing subculture. But it's really fascinating. There's, one episode of Frasier that features it, but aside from that, I think this is it. So, they all have like their little shacks on the lake, and, Max has his like old fishing pole that he's had since he was a kid. That's like his lucky pole and everything. And there's the woman who like sells coffee and gum and cigarettes out of the back of her truck. And I don't know, it's just like, I really like the idea of that kind of community, and it's a fascinating subculture, and it just makes a lot of sense and works in this movie.
That would be, and I guess I don't have this this is not an idea for anything, but I was like that it does sound like a fun idea for a series, like a sitcom. It's almost like not Northern Exposure, but kind of like a Northern Exposure. Or I'm also reminded of the film Mystery Alaska. Have you ever seen that?
I never saw that. No. I know of it, but
I haven't seen it in probably 20 years. I think it came out 20 years ago. I remember really liking it, and it's just, it's about this little, community, I think, up in Alaska. And I mean, it's very hockey centric. It's not ice fishing, but I like that. Yeah. Like they have that whole little town set up on the ice.
On a frozen lake. Yeah.
Which then in Grumpier Old Men, it's not frozen. It's summer. And I thought that was a good choice. I like that they did it.
Oh, totally. Yeah. It adds a completely different element to it. They're after, in Grumpy Old Men, everyone's after this catfish hunter that, well, the big thing is that John Sr., Burgess Meredith, like he's been trying to catch this fish his whole life. And then at the end, while, Max and John are on their way to what we later find out is Max's wedding, hear that he's been spotted, and they go out on the lake to and they successfully catch Catfish Hunter, but they set him free in respect to John's dad, who's been like searching for this fish his whole life. And the fact that they caught him is all they need, and they don't need to have proof of it, So that was a sweet moment.
Yeah, exactly. In a lot of ways, I think Grumpier Old Men, it gets the sweet moments that Grumpy Old Men has, but it's funnier.
Yeah, it is funnier.
Sophia Loren
is great.
Great and just like radiant.
She's really wonderful. Something that she does in this and that Ann-Margaret did in the first is that, there are these bursts of color in an otherwise very like brown world. And it's really exciting. I mean, honestly, I bet that restaurant of theirs was pretty damn good.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have met Spaghetti Rigetti, her cousin that is from the town. He's only talked about, but I love the idea of somebody being named Spaghetti Rigetti.
Would it have been like casting at the time, like Bruno Kirby?
You love Bruno Kirby. Maybe like Paul Sorvino. Just trying to think of like at the time, you know.
That'd be fun to see Paul Sorvino.
Yeah.
In that. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway. But yeah, you love your Bruno Kirby. I know you lit a cigar.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Grumpier Old Men is a lot of fun. It's silly. It's ridiculous. I mean, I think that everybody can agree that Jacob and Melanie's wedding was all happening way too soon, or their engagement to one another. Like, I think this movie takes place pretty shortly after the first one. They kind of moved pretty fast, which is part of the whole thing. I guess they,
well, they had an established. Yeah. Well, yeah, that is part of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it was like, yeah, they've known each other forever. But yeah. Well, I thought it was interesting that I thought the whole box of wine thing, when Walter Matthau brings the box of wine to his date.
Oh yeah.
With Sophia Loren. I thought that was pretty funny. And I was like, so what I was confused at was how when they're at the festival, like the beer festival, or whatever it was downtown, and they start to do the chicken dance and play the chicken dance, and Kevin Pollak's character has no idea what it is, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure they're like, did he not have a bar mitzvah?
That's what I'm wondering about the Goldmans, is that they seem to be celebrating Christmas. But I was like,
there's a menorah in the background.
Oh, is there a menorah?
Of the scene.
Okay.
I feel like at one point you see him.
This would be in the first one.
Yeah. But then also, well, because I was thinking that as well during the wedding scene at the end of Grumpier Old Men, when it's in a church. And I was kind of like, oh, so I guess Jacob really, I mean, his name is Jacob, Max and Jacob Goldman. Yeah. Okay.
Coleman.
Yeah.
No, it's Goldman.
Nice.
This is not the birdcage. So I don't know. I never
made sense that it was then Sophia Loren, because
yes, that takes.
She not get married in a church. Come on.
Absolutely. So I don't know, that I did not notice the menorah thing. I was pretty sure that there was a Christmas element to things, but I think it's one of those, like, they live in I'm guessing like northern Minnesota. Mm-hmm. Probably not the largest Jewish community. Right. Yeah. Which is interesting, because it's like, Jacob is running for mayor, and it seems to me like a Jewish mayor would have been an abnormal thing in this tiny, northern Minnesota town, but
not when you can say this is like it came in Driving Miss Daisy. Like they celebrate Christmas to fit in.
That's true. That's true. So anyway, Dan, I mean, any thoughts about these movies before we move on to theorizing what could be?
It was fun to see them. And I like Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau just have this chemistry together that, it works. It makes a movie like Out to Sea, which is kind of, like a low rent version of this. It still makes Out to Sea fun. Also, Brent Spiner is hilarious in it.
Oh, I didn't know that he was in it. I never seen it.
Brent Spiner is in it. And I remember it was one of those that when I worked at West Coast Video, back in Westfield, New Jersey, when I worked at West Coast, we used to watch, that was like one of those movies that we would watch a lot, because it was like just safe enough where we could put it on. We watched that. We watched Down Periscope a lot with Kelsey Grammer.
Yeah. Talking about Frasier himself.
Yeah. I remember we did that one. We did those two quite a bit. But I remember Out to Sea was cute. And of course, my favorite Jack Lemmon, Walter Matthau film is JFK, 1991.
Oh, are they both in that?
Yeah, they don't have any scenes. Like Matthau plays a senator who's on a plane with Jim Garrison, and Jack Lemmon plays this character who may know something about the assassination because
right. It's been a while since I've seen JFK.
So good.
Yeah, don't know if that's one that we'll revisit on this show just because it's so niche.
Yeah, it does kind of like stand on its own. I guess you could call Nixon a kind of spiritual sequel to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when it comes to like latter day, talk about Walter Matthau performances. Like clearly, there's things like Bad News Bears that really are at the top of the list. But then when it comes to like latter day Matthau, I kind of just love his performance in the Dennis the Menace movie where he plays Mr. Wilson.
A good Mr. Wilson.
I feel like
he's perfect. Same year.
Is that the same
93.
year? I feel like he's kind of perfect in that role where it's not the guy on the prowl for a new woman. He's with Mrs. Wilson. He has his garden club. He's got the like pesky neighbor who gets to be the the Jack Lemmon analog. And that
Which
kid,
he calls him a menace. He calls it in the beginning of Grumpy Old Men.
I didn't catch that.
When they're talking to Buck Henry after Jack Lemmon like climbs out his window and is escaping. Yeah. Oh my God.
I don't know.
How
I feel
about
like
the scene where he falls off the roof and you're like, tell me he did not break a hip. Like, come on.
Oh yeah. These old guys.
Yeah. And then I guess another, I just got to call out, like, I know we mentioned Daryl Hannah before.
Right.
I feel like there's got to be another, like, and it's like Daryl Hannah, I feel like keeps, like, she was huge in the 80s. We talked about Splash before, Daryl Hannah.
I was going to say.
We were just talking about Oliver Stone, Wall Street. Daryl Hannah was huge. And then it was like the 90s. She was doing this, Grumpy Old Men. And then she kind of, I don't know what happened. And then Kill Bill. She was in Kill Bill and she was awesome in those movies. And then like, I looked it up and she's mostly been doing, I guess, like, she's B movies with Michael Madsen.
Well, I know that she's big into environmental activism. She's married to Neil Young. I can't speak to her.
Is she really?
If they're not married, they're essentially, married.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But, I don't know. I can't speak much to her acting career.
I guess
maybe
I'm
it's just
saying,
that she, I don't know, focuses her energies mostly elsewhere other than like, rather than getting big roles.
Well, I'm just saying I wouldn't complain if she were to pop up on an HBO drama series opposite Nicole Kidman. I would not any of them.
And I mean,
I would not.
Here's
complain.
the thing. Cast her as like Mackenzie Davis's mom in something. The two of them could totally work as being in the same family.
Yes, absolutely. But I wouldn't mind Daryl Hannah popping. It seems like Daryl Hannah, almost like, comes about in each decade, and I would like to see Daryl Hannah make another comeback. I would love to see her in something because she was just. She stood, I think she kind of stood apart. I think she kind of stood out. Yeah. And she had like just her range where she could do the comedy.
Blade Runner. Yeah.
Jeez. Okay. Anyway, enough said. Daryl Hannah. We miss you. Come back.
Yeah. We know you're listening. We know that you bought one of our t-shirts on tpublic.com.
Send us a picture of you with that Jesse Plemons shirt. I don't know.
Yeah. Hanging out with Kevin Pollak because I imagine that you do such a thing.
Of course.
Anyway, so Dan, what would you do with this property? So we talked about how there was going to maybe be a Grumpiest Old Men, but that got canned.
Well, first there's the conservative Grumpy Old Men that I would do with James Woods and Gary Busey, and I'd have like John Voight as the father. I don't know where Randy Quaid would fit in, but he'd be in there somewhere, like Stephen Baldwin in the Kevin Pollak role, Christy Swanson in the Daryl Hannah role, and they can put it on OAN Movie Network or whatever.
Yeah, it's a Parlor app exclusive.
Yeah, something like that. No, you know what? All right, I think there's so much there for. I think a prequel would be fun. This is clearly not the beginning of this relationship, so I think you could do like a nice, like kind of bittersweet comedy, almost comedy drama of them. Maybe in middle age, and or
would it be when John ends up with the woman that he marries, thus causing the rift?
Well, that's the thing. You could go further back.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of opportunity for that in a prequel. I don't necessarily know who necessarily would do it. I could not think of I could not think of an actor that I would cast, and I thought about it.
Yeah, that's the tough part, is that you're casting younger versions of iconic, I don't know, actors playing semi-iconic roles.
Yeah. I mean, they're kind of like they're that's what they're known for to like 90s kids.
See, my fear is that it would have been, and I know that this is a very different type of example, but when they did, the Dumb and Dumberer prequel, and having younger actors play the younger versions of Jeff Daniels and Jim Carrey, you just are just like, ugh, they're just doing impressions, and I don't know.
Yeah. So that wasn't the only, I mean, I was kind of thinking like, all right, well, what if you did a remake? What if you did a remake that could go from being more literal to more like, all right, maybe we change the setting. We change, the characters based on who they are. And I was thinking about how, like there's the Kaminsky method with Alan Arkin and Michael Douglas, which I know is not the same thing, but it's that similar, like partnering to older actors, and some of the shtick is about being old. So I thought about some pairings that I would be interested in seeing, just kind of for shits and giggles. I would love to see a De Niro and Pacino. I was also trying to think of who's in the right age range.
Well, yeah, like
De Niro and
actors
Pacino.
in their 70s and 80s. Yeah. De Niro and Pacino, I think, are the first to come up in anybody's minds.
Like Pacino in the Matthau role, and De Niro in the Lemmon role.
Right.
I would love to see that would be fun. I was thinking about that. I was thinking, I don't know, Tommy Lee Jones and Danny DeVito.
That'd be weird.
John Lithgow, I think, could be another another good one to do. Like John Lithgow and Harrison Ford.
Well, so obviously when you're talking about remaking a movie like this, you just kind of go down the mental list. And one of them that I was thinking, not that I think it should be remade, but like one of them that I was thinking was actually Jeff Bridges and Gene Hackman.
Really?
Yeah, because the thing
That's
is
a
like
pretty big age range.
You think so? I don't think that it.
Gene Hackman's
really,
like 88.
So what?
He's retired. Jeff Bridges. Well, I mean, okay, if you get rid of the backstory that like they were friends from childhood.
You know what? I don't think that it really, because to me, Walter Matthau feels a lot older than Jack Lemmon.
But Gene Hackman and Jeff Bridges?
Jeff Bridges is old. Well, 71.
That's a bigger age difference than between Ann-Margaret and Jack Lemmon.
Well, all I'm saying is like, I'm trying to think of actors who more of like their vibes, their acting styles. Because I feel like, okay, I know that I'm in a minority of this, but like, I'm tired of De Niro and Pacino, and De Niro did like Dirty Grandpa. And I feel like that's kind of,
I don't think it would be good.
Yeah.
I couldn't think of a pair that like Nick Nolte and Morgan Freeman, maybe.
Yeah. That's the thing, is just like, I don't want to see anybody doing this. And the thing is, I feel like the people that I'd want to see doing this are already doing it, because we already have Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin and Grace and Frankie who are doing this. They are grumpy old women.
Now, what if you took because I was also trying to think. I was also thinking of actresses who I would like to see. Who I'm like, oh, it would be cool to see them do something like this. And I was like, what if you got Sally Field and Diane Keaton together? What if you got Carol Burnett in the Burgess Meredith role? That would be. I thought about actually, honestly, that's the casting choice that got me the most excited was Carol Burnett in that Burgess Meredith role.
Yeah. I mean, I do feel like the only
awesome
way to remake it would be to do a gender flip, make it feel just a little bit more different, and also kind of right the wrong that was done in Grumpy Old Men with Ann-Margaret's character.
Yeah.
Giving the women more agency. But like I said, Lily Tomlin and Jane Fonda are doing that so well in Grace and Frankie on Netflix. So we kind of already have it.
Yeah, I have that down with my Kaminsky method note is kind of like it's not exactly the same, but it's the concept of pairing together. And with Lemmon and Matthau,
Kaminsky method is Michael Douglas and
Alan Arkin.
And Alan Arkin, that's right.
Yeah.
I haven't watched it.
I watched the first episode.
Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, it was fine. I just didn't really feel like keeping up with it.
There you go.
Yeah. I mean, same
the
with
method
Grace
is a
and Frankie.
failure.
Yeah. I mean, no, honestly, like there's so many shows out there and I just don't have a ton of time. So if something doesn't grab me and make me want to go back and keep watching it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I need to fall asleep watching episodes. I've been falling asleep during episodes of Fargo because I'm so compelled. I'm like, all right, I need to oh man, I think I can watch that episode. I have fallen asleep before the main title, which sometimes is like 20 minutes in.
Yeah,
but
that's true.
I have fallen asleep at the beginning and I've woken up at the credits.
The fourth season just wrapped up, and man, oh man,
I'm a couple of episodes before the end on the fourth season.
Okay,
yeah. So far for me, it does not. It ranks of the seasons I've seen. It does not rank above 2 and 3 for me, which rank very close to each other.
Same. I feel like 1 and 4 are very close for me, but. But I really appreciate a lot of the things that it does.
Oh, it has a lot going for it.
Yeah.
It's totally good. Anyway, sorry, John, go ahead. So, any thoughts? What would you do?
So yeah, I was going through
ice fishing.
I was going through the ideas of like how it could be remade. Who would play the roles? I've looked at, lists of actors in their 70s and 80s just to see if there's anyone I missed that would have like sparked something. And it's like, nah. So the idea that I really had is actually an idea that I had years ago that was a reality show pitch that I actually sold to a production company. The statute of limitations is up on this. Your eyes are wide. It was called The Real Golden Girls of Beverly Hills. And what we had discussed, in the show that we had sold was, this group of, and it really came down to women in their 70s and 80s who were actresses who were, big in their time. When it's Beverly Hills, of course, that's where you go and you sell things with names. And the casting that the production company had done, and granted, this was several years ago, and unfortunately, some of the women have passed, but it was like Florence Henderson and Diane Cannon, which would, Diane Cannon would love to see that. But it was, these women who actually do hang out with each other, and they have these spats with each other, and they have their, their frenemies, such as, and I don't think that, I don't know if I'm like breaking any news or anything, but like they're all frenemies with like Raquel Welch. And I know, see, that's the thing is it's just like, it's funny to know that like there are these real life grumpy old women and they have these little rivalries between them. And it's like, this doesn't have to happen with, celebrities in their 70s or in 80s,
right.
It could be real people in Minnesota, a reality show based on them.
I remember you telling me about that idea and thinking that I would watch that.
Yeah,
I'd watch that right now.
The problem that the production company was having selling it to the networks was that at the time, the networks were really focused on shows, and the statute of limitations is up on this, but the networks at the time were looking at shows about families, very much about things like the Kardashians and, like families like that. And it just never really worked with what the networks were looking for. So anyway, who knows? I mean, maybe it will come up sometime, but Profiles Television, that's the production company that owns the rights to it.
Well, I mean, yeah, all hope is not gone.
Yeah. So anyway, that's what I had. It was like, it was there the entire time, and it took me until like an hour before we started recording to realize like, oh, duh. Like,
yeah,
we've been down this road before.
Yeah. You've done this.
Yeah.
You've already done it. So, yeah.
Yeah. And Dan, in case you're wondering, yes, Raquel Welch is the name that I was looking up before the show began because I couldn't quite remember her name. She's not somebody who comes up all the time, but I did remember that she was in Naked Gun 33 1/3. And that's the movie that I knew I had to look up the cast list for to verify her name.
Okay. All right.
That's when they have like the Academy Awards and she's presenting and
Yes.
she like gets knocked over and like the microphone goes down her throat.
I never realized there'd be this many.
They added 75 new categories.
Best actor in a Columbus movie?
To present the award for Best Director is star of stage and screen Raquel Welch and the distinguished host of his own award-winning talk show, Phil Donahue.
That might be the envelope with the bomb. Keep looking here.
One more second, Mr. Donahue.
Oh my God, look at Donahue!
Stop the stairs, Joey. Joey!
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to present the
What the hell?
Jesus!
Go to commercial.
Do you remember that?
Vaguely. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
33 1/3 is the one I revisit the least often.
So, Dan, why don't we tell everybody what we're talking about on the next episode?
Oh, you mean episode
1994.
94?
Episode 94. Yeah.
1994, a contender for best year in movies. We are going to focus on one that does not often, it's not often one of the first that comes up in that conversation, but I don't know, that might be a mistake. So we'll talk about that next episode when we talk about Ron Howard's The Paper.
Yeah. Co-starring somebody who could be in the conservative Grumpy Old Men reboot, Randy Quaid.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
Yeah,
so,
who's fantastic in The Paper. We'll talk about it on the next episode.
Absolutely, that we will.
So follow us on Instagram at Ruined Childhoods Pod. We're on Twitter at Ruined_pod. Visit us on TeePublic. Check out some merch. And also, if you do go to our TeePublic page, you will see a sneak preview of our new podcast artwork that we will be debuting at episode 100, but you can get a sneak peek if you go to our online merch store. The link will be in this episode's description.
Big things in the works.
Yes. So Dan, as you are on your rowboat trying to catch Catfish Hunter, I wish you a good journey.
Good journey, moron.
Good journey, Butts.
It takes a woman all powdered and pink to joyously clean out the drain in the sink. And it takes an angel with long golden lashes and soft Dresden fingers for dumping the ashes.